What's this? A third Warframe video? At this point, I'm basically a Warframe YouTuber. I guess it could be worse. I could be a Destiny YouTuber.
Arthur! I can't! Arthur!
As you're all probably aware, Warframe is a game. I've covered it a bit in other videos such as Warframe and my two-part Let's Play series, but in this video I wanted to take a little bit of a more serious approach and cover its newest update, 1999. Warframe 1999 attempts to introduce Warframe into a new era, as plastered all over their advertisement campaign for this expansion. It's certainly new, but it's chained back by a lot of the old as it tries to leap forward, and what it does try new often feels stilted and not progressed enough. The story of 1999 has been the thing they have been pushing forward harder than just about anything else. They introduce new characters such as the proto-frames, which are like human talking versions of Warframes you knew before. They continue the storyline set up in Whisper of the Walls by following Doctor and Trotty into 1999. And they continue the Man in the Wall storyline in ways.
That's it, isn't it? The poison to your plan.
And what is that?
Love.
The story of this expansion feels insanely weak, and there are quite a few things that attribute to that. So it's better that we hop right into it so I can explain why this story doesn't really work. So for anyone who doesn't know, the story of 1999 is pretty simple.
That was a lie.
Doctor and Trotty, basically Space Dr. Mengele, has gone back in time to escape the void beast known as the Man in the Wall from getting it. He goes back in time. It doesn't really work. The Man in the Wall is able to follow him. What it ensues is that the Man in the Wall is basically like, "Tell me what you know, Doctor and Trotty." Dr. Trotty's like, "No. I have the tool to beat you." And all the while, we've gone back in time as well, and we've made friends with this like group of horny cancer patients with superpowers, and we work with them to get Doctor and Trotty. We finally get him, and he's like, "You don't have the strength to do what must be done." And then you get the bad ending where they nuke this like fake town, city, whatever. And then later on, after you've done the sexual harassment minigame, we'll get to that later, you can go back and do the good ending where they don't nuke the weird new city. But it doesn't really matter because during this time, your character puts the place in a time loop. So nothing you do there matters at all, ever. Trust me, I know that's a lot. But even if you're someone like me, who's sort of been following the story, it doesn't make any sense. So as a story, the big issue 1999 runs into is the trying to balance the island of content with its characters, as well as progressing the larger story at hand. And in this, they end up weakening the main villain of this new era, saga, whatever you want to call it, as well as confusingly progressing the eventual ally of the saga, Space Dr. Mengele, Doctor and Trotty. The big issue they run into with Doctor and Trotty is that they don't know how to show or write a nuanced character. So Doctor and Trotty most of the time just shows up, stands there. Sometimes he goes, "You're not strong enough to do this." Or he goes, "The man in the wall will fail." And that's all he does for 1999. Not really interesting. He's just kind of there to give the stinger at the end to go, "Tao is coming." And basically just sequel bait. What should have been probably the most interesting character in this expansion, given that they've been building him up for a while, ends up just kind of being there. On the other hand, the man in the wall is someone they completely butchered for the sake of the story, for the sake of having their weird, horny sexual harassment minigame. The man in the wall was once kind of just the chaos god of the game. He'd show up, he'd give you powers, he'd show up, he'd fuck something up, he'd show up, he'd go, "Hey, hey, kiddo." And he was just kind of this all powerful force. And that's what made him threatening. In 1999, they call him the Indifference. And the Indifference is defeated by you becoming friends with everyone and giving them a pep talk. It wouldn't be a review of 1999 if we skipped over the 6 most exciting parts of this expansion. The 6 proto-frames. These are human versions of Warframes you've probably played before. They're mostly starter Warframes. And they are certainly something. You interact with the proto-frames mostly through Kim conversations. This is basically just your AOL instant messaging app. It's kind of an RPG. You have preset things you say, the character responds, you respond back. Sometimes you have choice of what you could say that raises or lowers your disposition with said character. It happens. The interesting thing about these chats is that all the proto-frames are a singular character trait, flanderized to make a person. And they're also extremely fucking horny.
Since you're such a quick learner, I'm wondering if I can teach you a thing or two over here.
Now, I'm not saying that Digital Extreme should not write new characters. I think it's important that if you want a large universe, you need it to be inhabited by characters. And Warframe's big issue right now is that a lot of its characters in the universe aren't really characters, similar to the proto-frames. So when they came in with 1999 with the promise of 6 distinct characters, it was interesting. But the issue they ran into is that these 6 distinct characters completely derail the plot and completely steal focus away and weaken the main players in the plot. Turning players like your main villain into an understandable, digestible entity called the Indifference and then defeating him with love is very Disney Channel and takes a lot of the mystique away from the universe. On the flip side, having a character like Doctor and Trotty, who's been just kind of this awful lore character, not awful in like a bad way, awful in a he's a bad person kind of way, just kind of show up and be like very, okay, this is the eventual ally of the saga, also feels very weak. Paired together, along with the extreme focus on the proto-frame, the story itself left me feeling very dissatisfied and not very intrigued in the future of what this part of Warframe has to tell. With all of that said, the story is only 1/3 of the content offerings in any given Warframe update. So what about the others? What about the gameplay? From a gameplay perspective, 1999 stands a lot taller, with a campaign that includes unique missions that have you playing as the proto-frames themselves and utilizing their abilities in interesting ways, as well as a less well done on the run turret section. To get the bad out of the way first, the turret section isn't necessarily one of the worst things I've ever played. It actually is always kind of the worst part of any game, but the main allure of any older turret section is the spectacle. You're in a big helicopter, you're on a truck, you're seeing big things blow up. It's fun in that respect. Where 1999's fails is you're in a tunnel and you're shooting at vehicles that spawn out of nowhere, and your field of view is super small, and it doesn't really have the big scale and spectacle to make up for the lacking mechanics that any turret section has. On the other hand, I found the character sections quite a bit of fun. I think that when a campaign is willing to go out of its way to take the player out of the shoes and put another player into it, it's a lot of fun. I think something like New War was probably the best they had done it, where you were playing as a Grenier, where you were playing as a Corpus, where you were playing as Tension. I think that that is ideally what I want out of it. But I didn't dislike what 1999 did with it, with us just kind of playing as Warframes. So you're swapping between like Trinity, you're swapping between Volt, you did a Cyto 9, which is the new Warframe, Sniper section. It was fun. It was unique. I enjoyed that part of it. Overall, I found the gameplay of the campaign itself not to be bad, but not to be the best they've ever done. It's kind of in that middle ground where it's unique, it's special, and I remember it, but I can't really look at it and go, wow, this is a great campaign, you know? And so, with all of that, I'd like to move on to the most important part of an expansion in a live service like Warframe, the post campaign. Oh my god, there's just fucking nothing. Yeah, 1999's post campaign is probably one of the weaker ones they've ever done. With only 4 new weapons, with one of them they've already given out at the year's TennoCon. 1 new Warframe, which admittedly is pretty fun. 3 mission types that, with one of them just being altered survival, one of them being a new assassination mission type, and one of them being player versus enemy. There just isn't much here. Of the good of the post campaign, the AK-57, the gun they give out at TennoCon, is pretty fun to play with. The Warframe is pretty fun. He's basically built around buffing all your guns. The assassination mission is pretty unique. It is a tank that turns into a spider around phase 2. Just a fun new experience, I thought. Of the not so good, the updates they did to survival try and make the mode more involved with you actually using the survival tanks that replenish your air supply, which has been a problem with survival for a while. Usually you get into a mission, you just kind of farm the pickups. But it doesn't go over well because these things spawn and it's really awkward setup and people spread out and it's just a whole mess. It's a step in the right direction towards making this mode more involved and less mindless, but not a step that feels good in the long run. When it comes to the absolutely abysmal and terrible, and I'm never going to replay this mode again, no matter what Digital Extremes offers me, the face-off mode is poorly done. The face-off mode involves 2 of the proto-frames kind of going head-to-head in a semi-pseudo competition-like format. 2 teams set up with basic objectives, go against each other to see who could do it fastest. You could send debuffs to the other side. The issue they run into is that enemy spawns are not consistent enough in this game to do something competitive like this. So if both teams are given an exterminate, one team could get just luckier and get like massively ahead of the other team, while one team is waiting for these Scaldra troops to spawn in. It doesn't really work too well in the grand scheme of things and isn't really something that's fun to play outside of just doing it to unlock the full star chart. I feel like the post campaign of this expansion didn't really feel too good just because there wasn't enough there. And because Warframe functions on content islands with their expansion, when you got to the end of 1999, there just wasn't much reason to revisit it or its content after you got the slim amount of items from it. And I guess that kind of wraps up the whole expansion. There isn't much to say about it because there isn't much here. The story focuses too much on the proto-frames. The campaign itself does some unique things, but not unique enough to make it one of the greats. And the post-campaign tries things out, but doesn't do enough to make it stick out. And that's really all there is to say about Warframe 1999. He's right behind me, isn't he? Techrot Encore serves as finishing off 1999 with content originally planned to launch with 1999, but wasn't finished soon enough to make the cut. Techrot Encore provides a new set of liches, which is an adversary system in the game, a bunch of new weapons, a new warframe, a new mission, just a bunch of stuff all around. The Techrot liches introduced within this update actually follow a new form of lich defeating system. So with the old liches, you collected 3 Requiem mods and put them in a specific order within your Parazon, which is like this dagger hand thing, and then you were able to kill the lich and go to a final confrontation where you either spared the lich, were able to have it spawn in missions, not really that useful, or killed the lich and got some cosmetic loot as well as a weapon. With the Techrot liches, instead of having to find 3 mods, you only need to find 1 mod. And with this, you take the 1 mod, you stab it with the Parazon, and you get a bit of potency against it. You can then attach potency mods, which makes this mod a little more potent against it, and then it does more damage, which lead to a similar final confrontation where you could either spare it or kill it. Instead of just getting a weapon, you get these things called heart cells that let you buy the weapon you want. The great parts of this system are that defeating a lich now feel a lot more progressible and don't feel like such a slog. You also have this great system at the very end where you get the currency and you can buy what weapon you want. One small thing is that the end battle with the Techrot is also much bigger spectacle than old liches, which would just be fought on older tile sets. The bad of this update really boils down to the live service elements injected into it. It really boils down to the weapons you want to buy could be on rotation, and that is just super fucking annoying. If I want to buy a weapon, let me buy it. I don't need your playtime boosters in it. I think if that was gone, this system would probably feel perfect. Another issue I have in this kind of general vicinity of the game is that the weapons you could get from the liches don't really feel special. Like with the other lich weapons, you have something like the Kuva Branum, which is this giant exploding bow. This thing is special. With the Tenosite weapons, you have dual pistols, which are cool, I guess. You have a shotgun that shoots mites. You have an axe that changes looks based on what status it has procced on it. It's just all very bland in comparison, even when it comes down to the weapons that are really just updated. They're getting stat boosts instead of unique effects added to them to really make them pop out and shine and make these weapons feel like adversary weapons. That's not to say that they're bad weapons. A lot of them are just very good out of the box with basic mods, under-leveled, but they're not unique weapons, is where the issue really lies. Other than the Techrot liches, this update also adds a new node to the 1999 chart, as well as a new frame. You get this new frame by playing on this new node, and you get currency or parts for this frame. The currency is really just kind of like a luck makeup mechanic, so that if your RNG is bad, playing it a ton can still get you the frame. But you get all of this from this node, and the node is just defense on a new tile set. Other than what was prior mentioned, you also got 4 new weapons based on the enemies in 1999. I wasn't really a fan of these weapons. I felt like they were really slow or clunky, or probably just required too much to build into them, when it's probably a lot easier just to get things like the Tenosite weapons in this update. Other than that, the update also added some new furniture items to decorate your new like orbiter location, which they added with this update. It was pretty nice, especially since the pickings from the rest of the update felt very much like the items game developers give you just so they could go, look, it's not all in the cash shop. It was nice to just get some stuff I could get for standing and didn't have to worry about otherwise. Overall, the Techrot Encore update felt pretty good. It made 1999 feel a little less barren. Instead of being a content isle with a patch of grass and a palm tree, it's a content island with a patch of grass, a rock, and 2 palm trees, which obviously felt a lot nicer to play in. But it's kind of disappointing knowing it's probably going to stay like this, like 90% of other Warframe content. To me, Warframe 1999 was a deeply disappointing experience with a lackluster story that was very clearly drafted as a character drama, but then was fused into the game's story and weakened everything around it. I didn't really like how Content Islandy it felt, even in the game of Warframe. This is not a good feeling for something when it feels so sequestered from everything else. And of course, that could change, but given the state of everything else, I am not holding out my hope for it. Things like the warframes introduced and some of the weapons were fun, but a lot of the time felt not unique enough and not pushing the limits of what they could do enough. Overall, it was fun. It had some unique ideas, but it just didn't hit the mark it needed to. Oh shit, I forgot to give it a numbered rating. I give Warframe 1999 6 cheese wedges out of 10.